Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. So today, we're gonna do a tire review on the STI ATRs. Now if you're anything like me, before you spend big dollars on tires, especially on side-by-side tires as they're going through the roof, you go online and you do some research. Well, a lot of times when you find a tire review online, it's look at my tire, they look really good, see the tread pattern, they're so heavy, and they work really well with like 3 miles on them. Well, I got more than 3 miles on these. I actually have just over 1,200 miles on these. So I wanted to do a quick review on how well they're working for me, my riding style, how I have them set up, and would I buy them again. So let's go ahead and get started. Now before we get into how the tire performs, let's talk about the tire itself. So this tire right here, mounted on a stock KRX true beadlock rim, is in the mid 70-pound range, between 74 and 76 pounds depending. Now I do have these internally balanced with some balanced speeds. The style of the tire, if you look at it, is more of a light duty truck all-terrain tire. It has a nice flat tread pattern. It's got a small curve right here, but it's pretty much looks like a light duty truck tire. Now in comparison, I did run the System 3 350s on the Pioneer in a 35-inch tall tire. Those ones, the tread pattern was a little bit tighter. So I do prefer this tread pattern just a little bit more because the lugs are a little farther apart. Now on the OEM website, it says it has 18/32 of tread depth and they measure at 34.5 inches tall. Where they're getting those numbers, I don't know. But I have a tire tread depth measuring gauge. I actually have two different brands. I've measured these tires in the center, and every time I come out with 17/32. Now this is my spare, it is brand new. So it still has little nubs on it. Also, the OEM says this is a 34.5 inch tall tire. I get 34 inches even. Now 34 inches is an 18 PSI, so I don't know where the OEM manufacturer is getting it. But just understand, with pretty much all tires across the board, if they say it's a 35, very few are a true 35. Honestly, if they say it's a 33, a lot of them are 32, 31. I don't know why UTV tire manufacturers say it's something, but then it's usually an inch, inch and a half shorter. Now, that was an 18 PSI, I measured 34.5 inches. So, these tires also have some pretty good sidewall grip, which does come into play when you're off-roading in the rocks, such as Moab. It does work very well. They also have a very thick sidewall, and we'll get into a little bit more of that later, with a nice rim protector or bead protector around the edge. Lastly, I want to talk about how hard the rubber is on these tires. Now there is actually a way to measure it, and it's right here. It's a durometer. Now this is a Shore A. So Shore A is what you're going to use for normal to soft rubber, polyester, leather, wax, and so forth. Now if you were to get like the Type D, that's going to be more for hard resin, acrylic, glass, stuff like that. So when you take this, there's a small pin right here in the bottom. I don't know if the camera's going to kind of show that there. And it pushes in and it'll tell you the hardness. Now you had zeroed out, so I can put it there and you'll see it measures. So on the end of my finger, it's measuring 41.5. So when I come over here to the center of the tire, these lugs here, I did 5 or 6 of them. And what it came out to is about 68 on the scale of 0 to 100. Now, when I went inside between these lugs, and I had to be kind of careful because there's only certain spots I could get it where it wasn't gonna hit the base of this, the average is around 64. And then my side lugs here on the side was also 64. So just for comparison, the tires here that are worn, these measured between 64 and 66. I did 3 or 4 spots on each tire all the way around. We'll get into the tread depth on these here in a second, but as it wears, it does get a little softer. So that's just something to think about on tires. These are going to be a little bit on the harder side, but as they wear, they do get a little softer. Let's talk about tire performance. That's what people really want to know. How do they do? Well, let's start off with the easy ones, snow. I've got about a mile of snow on them. They did good for the mile I had, but it was only 4 or 5 inches deep. So I can't really comment on how they'll do in the snow to be honest with you. One thing I can say is these sidewalls are very thick or very stout. They're a very sturdy sidewall. I don't know how else to describe it. So I found in Moab at the higher tire pressures, the sidewalls were still very stiff. And even when I lowered them down to 6 and 8 PSI for my tire pressures, the sidewalls were very stiff until the tires warmed up. Then I would get some nice sidewall flex. So if you're looking for a lower pressure tire for the snow, I'm sure these will do great. You can run them at a lower PSI, but I don't know how much sidewall you're gonna get flexing out. So mud, that's another easy one. I live in Phoenix. We don't have a ton of mud here. Now I do go up to the mountains. The worst mud I've seen in this is probably 60, 70 foot pits, no more than 10, 12, 14 inches deep, and it does have a bottom. Now I'm not talking that real thick peanut butter mud that you got down south. I'm talking more of a soupy mud, like I said, with a bottom. These do clear out good. When you do kind of get in that pudding, maybe a little bit thicker than pudding, goose throttle, they'll clear out pretty good, and they will throw chunks all the way down to KRX. So I will be adding fender flares here eventually. So they do clean out good for what we have out here. But if you're gonna be a hardcore mudding guy, it's not the tire for you. I mean, these are more of a truck style tire. So let's get back into the bread and butter of where I spend the most of my time. The desert and the woods. So the desert, these things perform phenomenal. Traction is really, really good. Again, I run 12 PSI in the front, 14 in the rear. And I don't have any issues with traction in the desert. Now, what people don't realize in the desert, especially out here, is we have a lot of cactus and a lot of rocks. And I've had zero issues with sidewall flats, puncture in a sidewall, pinch flat. I have pulled cactus out of this where you're running over something and you get needles in the side. No issues there. I have yet to use my spare. I have zero patches in any of those tires in over 1,200 miles. That's pretty good in my eyes. Now up in the woods, where we get in those tight trails, it's gonna be a little bit more muddy, lots of rocks, lots of tree roots. Sometimes the KRX is just a little too wide for the trails that we'll get on, and you'll rub the tire sides, no issues whatsoever. Tons and tons of traction with these tires. Remember, you have to look at your tread pattern for any given terrain. I would say this is a very good all-terrain tread pattern. The lug spacing is just far enough apart where you don't get that hum when you're driving, but it cleans out and it grips really good on your obstacles. Now let's talk about the rocks. That's where I've spent most of my time lately playing, and that's where I really, really like these tires. Now, 12 to 14 PSI in the rocks is way too much air pressure for these things. That's great for the street, for the fast desert, for the woods. When I get in the rocks, it's usually 6 PSI in the front, 8 in the rear. And if I'm not really carrying anything in the rear, maybe just a small cooler on the pack out system with some water in it, a patch kit or something, maybe down to 6 PSI back there too. These things do great. They have tons of grip, and the sidewall grip is phenomenal. There was a couple obstacles out in Moab. I think it was Spicy Jalapeno was one of them, where you had to use the sidewall of your tire to get up that second ledge because you just didn't have the wheelbase in the KRX, and it did great. So these do very well in rocks, but as I said earlier, you gotta lower that PSI and you gotta get them warm to get the sidewall flex so that that tire will grip the rocks just that much better. Now, one downside with the rocks, with not just these tires, any tires, they do eat up your tires, especially in Moab. Moab's like driving on sandpaper, but it's the time of your life. If you haven't been out there, get out there. So let's talk about how well these things wear. Like I said, I have a tread depth meter, yet green, goes down to yellow and red. So OEM says these things are 18-30 seconds. On the two different brands of tread depths, I've got 17-30 seconds. So that's what I'm gonna go with. I literally have like 1,210 miles on these tires. A lot of it is in the rocks, asphalt, something. most of my time I spend in two-wheel drive. But I do rotate my tires every 500 miles. I like to do different inspections on the vehicle, check the differentials and whatnot. So new tire, measured right here in the center, is 1730 seconds. So now tires that are on the front started life on the front for the first 500 miles. They went to Moab. For the second 500 miles, they're back on the front with 200 miles on them. So my front tires right here are currently at 1130 seconds, which makes sense. The rear ones are at 1230 seconds. So these ones had a lot harder life being on the rear, because basically my whole Moab trip, they were on the rear. And then the ones in the back are now catching up. Now I do a lot of asphalt driving there. I'll take the kids to school, just testing out, windshields or whatnot, or running quick errands. So the back ones are gonna wear much faster than the front because the rear end of this thing is locked. So what does that mean in total? So right now, with these tires, my setup, my style of driving, like I said, I do a lot of hard pack, asphalt, rocks, whatnot. It does each tires up a little faster. I'm burning up 1/32 every 200 to 240 miles. So let me break that down even farther for you. That should give me, if I go down to 430 seconds, between 3,000 3,500 miles if I continue to wear at this same rate. So 3,000, 3,500 miles on a set of tires, not too bad for UTV tires. Now if that was truck tires, it'd be like, whoa. Could you put light duty truck tires on these? Absolutely, you just need longer bolts for the bead locks. Might not be a bad idea because the price of these tires now are over $200, and it's the same price for an off-brand truck tire on a 15-inch rim. So something to think about there. I ran truck tires in the Pioneer, absolutely loved it. I did get one sidewall pinch flat in the Pioneer. Didn't even know I had a flat tire until someone pointed out because the sidewalls were so stiff. So that is the downside of a light duty truck tire, is you get much stiffer sidewalls, but you get a lot longer tread life. So that is a pro, especially if you're gonna do a lot of street driving and whatnot like myself, because they're rated for much higher mileage on a much heavier vehicle. You know, this thing fully loaded is 2,000 pounds. Look at like a Ford Ranger, 4,000 pounds. So let's talk about some road use. I know I've touched on it as I've talked about this, and it's allowed me to stand here talking, but they do very well. Like I said previously, I have them internally balanced with balancing beads. I put the bag in there when I mounted them, so it was nice and easy. No issues whatsoever. Now I do have a slight vibration above 60 miles an hour right now. That is not drivetrain. It didn't start happening until I got back from Moab, or while I was at Moab, and I think it's just I got something a little off balance from spinning the tires in the rocks and whatnot. But honestly, would not hesitate to drive them up and down the road. So let's do a quick walk around. I'll show you the condition of the tires after 1,200 miles, and then I'll tell you if I'll buy them again. All right, so here is the brand new tire. As you can see, is my spare. A couple things to notice is you see this tread right here and how big that is and how nice these side lugs are. But then you go to this tire here. So this is my tire that was on the back while I was at Moab, and look at the difference on how it has worn this. Now I did use a lot of sidewall, as you can see, in different areas, scratching it up, climbing some of these rocks. It's not as bad on the inside. If we come around here to the back, you can see these were on the front. There is much more of it there, and you can still have a little bit of ridge here, but there is some damage right there. Coming around to the passenger side, like I said, this is the tire that was on the front when I was in Moab. Looks really good. And then finally, the last tire here that was on the rear. As you can see, it's almost flat on these edges compared to the new one. There's a small little lip there, but there is some wear, and it's probably the biggest areas these leading edges here are worn. So finally, would I buy them again? Yes. Yes, I will. I will probably actually be ordering 3 more here shortly, just to have them, and then I will rotate this spare in with those other 3, take the best one of those when they wear out, and use that as my new spare. Now in saying that, I should get another 1,800 miles, give or take, on these tires, probably a little bit more, depending on how much asphalt and rocks I do. So if you're looking for an all-terrain, light-duty truck style tire that's got a 10-ply rating with a DOT stamp, these may be something you're interested in. I do like them better than the System 3 350s, just because of the more aggressive lug pattern. I think it's a better off-road tire, but that's my personal opinion. So hope this wasn't your typical tire review of, yeah, look at my new tire, it's really good, it looks cool. I mean, yeah, they look great, they're 34 inches tall, but how do they perform? And that's where these things really do excel. While I'm in the streets, the rocks, you know, the woods, out in the deserts, I can do pretty much everything, even some light duty mud trails. Snow, haven't made it there yet. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and until next time.